Good morning. Welcome into Let's Bet It here on Pickswise. I'm Mark Zeno, joined by Jared Smith here for a Wednesday edition. We're brought to you by Superbook Sports. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Let us know what comments and picks you're on below. We'll try to get to them as many as we can. Make sure you download the Pickswise app on the Apple Store and Google Play. Jared, good morning. Welcome. We are through one game in the divisional round of the Major League Baseball playoffs. We're going to get to Paul Sporer. He's going to join us to talk about that. We'll have some NFL Week 6 line moves, college football key games, and, of course, our plays of the day. Good morning to you, friend. How are you?
Good morning, sir. Nice win for our Bombers last night. Did what they had to do. Nice job with the plays of the day, both yourself and the puck queen herself, Lauren Jabara, back in the saddle with another. And she took a page out of your book. One of Zeno's periods last night. I was watching the show yesterday, and you guys did a fantastic job with a couple of POD winners. You tell me what you think about this. ALDS off today? Is that normal? I mean, maybe I'm just, forget what happened last year and previous years, but I don't like that schedule, especially for the Yankees after winning that game last night. You want to carry over momentum into game 2, and they take a day off today, and then weather tomorrow on the East Coast, which is no bueno.
Yeah, I mean, who knows if they're going to get that game in, but they usually typically split, so they don't have games. They have games every single day, right? Because you're going to get an off day after games 1 and 2. So at least you'll have –
tough break, though, for the teams that won last night, though, I think. The American League teams that won. You want to carry that momentum over.
I think so, but, I mean, for both of the higher-seeded teams, you're sort of reinstalling the confidence you already had going in that you're the better team. So, and I think for a team like – that's the key. That's the biggest key, for both Seattle and Houston, who, got deep into their bullpens in that game.
True.
They need the extra day off more than anybody. So they are actually enjoying
that Houston game was nuts. Hey, people who say baseball's boring had a rough day yesterday. That was a rough day for the baseball's boring crowd.
I don't think Seattle recovers from that loss in a short series. 7-game series, sure. In a short series, you don't recover from that because that's the kind of game you needed to split. Because Houston will come back today and get right and figure it out probably and win the game. And it'll just be one of those spots where, because they're so veteran, they won't play badly 2 nights in a row. And instead of being 1-1, now you're going down home 0-2, and it's a whole different world.
Castillo's the guy, though. And I remember we talked about this when the Yankees failed, I guess, or declined really to match that Mariners offer. I mean, that's a guy that, he shoves tomorrow and they even that series. We think maybe differently about it, but I agree. I would say momentum. But you know what? I'll be honest. I think the day off helps Seattle a lot. It really does. I mean, you imagine having to go back out there, especially if it was another day game today, and have to get right back on the hill and face this Astros lineup after what Alvarez did in the 9th. So maybe the day off helps Seattle a little bit, but I would be surprised if the Astros come back and win. I mean, if the Mariners come back and win that series.
All right, let's get to the NFL here because we have some midweek line movement, so we'll discuss it in the games that we're looking at. Panthers at Rams opened up at 8.5. It's been bet up now to 10.5. I don't think any of that, to be honest with you, necessarily is sharp money. I think a lot of it has to do with, again, Baker Mayfield officially being out, coach getting fired and all that movement and everything. I would tell you, though, I still think this is a dangerous spot for the Rams, Jared. Their offensive line is banged up horribly. They're in their 3rd string center. This is the NFL, man. I mean, there's not a huge talent discrepancy gap between any team, even the best and the worst in the league. So this 10.5 feels still like a lot for the Rams.
Yeah, it does. I'll give you the nugget that I tweeted out earlier this week. NFL teams the week after firing their head coach, not really a definable trend. 17 and 15 ATS since 2003. Last year, 1-1. The Jags, they lost to the Texans as a favorite. And then the Raiders were the surprise. They were a big underdog against the Broncos, and they won by 10. So, again, not really much to glean off of that. I would say each situation is very case by case. The Panthers' defense was playing well. I think the Niners deserve a little more credit there than maybe we're willing to give them for that game on Sunday. Off of the Monday night game, traveling to the East Coast, their offense looked fantastic against a really good Panthers defense. The one thing I'll say about the Panthers defense in this game, and maybe this is good news for Matthew Stafford, first-round pick J.C. Horn, he was hurt, corner, really good corner, maybe the best corner on the team. Safety Xavier Woods, hamstring injury. Another backup corner, Stanley Thomas Oliver. He missed the Niners game. Jeremy Chin, we've discussed him. Their Pro Bowl safety already on IR for a prior injury. So the Panthers secondary has been really banged up. And maybe this is the Matthew Stafford get right. I mean, I still think there is talent there with that LA offense. I just think they haven't put it together. You mentioned the offensive line. It's been a disaster. That's one of the big reasons why. So maybe this is the week if you want to make the case that, the Panthers secondary is very suspect here. On the other side of the ball, PJ Walker, a lot of variance there. Last year, didn't play much, 54% completion percentage, touchdown, 3 picks, pretty much the same vibe in 2020, very limited action, very hard to tell and hard to predict how he's going to play. I would imagine not great, but there's variance there. I think there is opportunity for him to perform better than Baker, which is a very low bar. But there's also, I think, the opportunity for the floor to be lower. So very difficult game, I think, to handicap because of the unknowns with PJ Walker.
All right, let's move on to Jaguars and the Colts. It was originally Colts -1. Now it's up to Colts -2.5. I will tell you, I love the under in this game. I don't think either one of these teams are going to score, so I'll take the under 42, but I don't know if I'd touch the side.
I really like the Colts. So I bet them at 1.5 earlier this week. I think there's a little revenge factor here. I mean, these teams just played 3 weeks ago, and it was all Jags. And I think what we've seen from Jacksonville since is a ton of regression. Last week was a quote-unquote same old Jags kind of performance. They had a home game against the Texans and Lovie Smith's ancient defensive scheme in a game that they really needed to win because the Colts were coming off a win. The Titans, of course, played well. They got themselves another win. The AFC South is starting to look like the normal AFC South standings with Indy and Tennessee at the top. Jacksonville needed to keep up pace. And what did we see from Trevor Lawrence? The worst completion percentage over expectation of any quarterback in the entire week, including Baker Mayfield. So what I'm seeing with Trevor, weeks 1 through 3, top 5 graded out analytics. Weeks 4 and 5 against the Eagles, who are good, and the Texans, who are bad, bottom 10. Very volatile with Trevor Lawrence. And, maybe the book is out. We'll see. But the thing that's really concerning to me, the Colts get extra rest. You would think Shaq Leonard comes back. And their defense still been playing well, even without him, relatively well. And the Jaguars' offensive line took a big hit on Sunday. So their starting left guard, Ben Barch, left with a knee injury. And you could kind of tell that it's going to be something long-term because the Jaguars signed a guard this week. So I'm a little concerned about the Jaguars' offensive line, especially the interior of the offensive line. If you can't run the ball and it's 3rd and long for Trevor Lawrence, we already saw inconsistent play. Matt Ryan's been awful, but I would expect at some point there to be some positive regression with him because of the offense that they're playing and the weapons around him. You think they maybe get Jonathan Taylor back. So I think under a field goal with the Colts at home, you feel good about this. This was a 7-point spread over the summer. So I think I like Indy at home.
I can do this a lot quicker. Trevor Lawrence is an average quarterback and Doug Peterson is an average coach. The book is out. That's the bottom line. That's not going to change. There's nothing about that that's going to change. He just doesn't have it. You can watch other young quarterbacks and see the flash and the plays that they make that they've had in their first and second years. You see none of that from Lawrence. He's extremely vanilla. He's very check down. He's very simple. He doesn't make great throws. Sorry. A lot of great college quarterbacks didn't cut it in the NFL. That's life. So, I'm with you. I think the Colts are the right side. Commanders and Bears, total at 40 has dropped down to 37.5. This game, a Thursday night game that for the second week in a row, nobody wants to watch. Good job, Amazon Prime. Congrats. So, tell me how they score points in this game.
I didn't even – so I have notes on almost every game so far except this one and the Ravens-Giants game, which I'll get to later this week probably. But I literally have no desire to watch this game. I have no desire to bet this game. It's featuring 2 of the worst quarterbacks in the league. We thought last week was bad. This week's worse. Like, I know Russell and Matt Ryan have been bad, and we can make fun of the Broncos and Hackett and all this stuff, but let's be honest. I still think Russell Wilson is a more competent quarterback than the two that we are going to see this week. Although, to be fair, the Bears showed a lot of fight in that game against the Vikings. They were down 21-3, and they came back to take the lead. So I think you could say that there's at least some fight in both of these teams, but the talent level is very poor, and that's going to make this game probably a tough watch.
I would tell you that the Bears getting back in that game is more of a reflection on the Vikings and the game script that they love to play every single time, which are one of two game scripts. Go up big, let the other team back in it, or get down big and then get back in it and win by a field goal and don't cover. So that is how the Minnesota Vikings roll every single week. All right, let's continue on here to some college football with some key games in week 7. Big games. And boy, I didn't know Christmas came early until I looked at the lines in this, particularly the total in this Penn State-Michigan game. But Jared, explain to me how this number is at 52 and a half. Like, this is a gift. Neither one of these teams are getting to 30. So explain to me where these points are coming from. That 52 is this total. What am I missing?
Yeah, Penn State's defense has been playing really well. Manny Diaz's scheme, I think, is starting to set in like Novocaine. They've faced some decent offenses too. I don't want to go nuts, but they faced a couple of okay offenses. I think Purdue's offense in week 1 maybe is the best that they faced. Listen, this is I think the line's right on this game.
Counts. Like, going into Auburn and winning a game counts. I know Auburn is bad, but it's a tough. Auburn was bad last year, and they pushed Alabama to a 2-point win. So it's not like it's an easy thing to do. Winning road games in big conferences is very, very tough. I'm with you 100%. The line doesn't bother me. It's the total that bothers me.
I think the line's right. I think the line's right. So some of the rankings I look at, let me see if I can't find this really quick. Yeah, I mean, I look at a couple of the ratings that I trust. There's like 3 or 4 rating systems that have been pretty accurate so far this year, like over 60-70% ATS. Most of them have this game in the low 50s. So I could see that. I could see where the total is right. I think game script to me dictates both teams are going to pound the rock. I don't think Penn State's going to really trust Sean Clifford to go in there and go bananas. I think they're going to keep it very simple for him. And let's be honest, Michigan's offense has been very run-heavy this year.
Wouldn't that lead to an under? The more they run the ball, kill more. Like, what about that predicates?
I wouldn't bank on this game being very fireworky to me.
No,
I agree. I think I see like a 24-17, 24-21, even 27-28, 24 kind of game. I mean, it's going to be right. I think the spread and total are right on this game. I think this is a no bet for me in any capacity because I do think 7 is very fair. I think 6.5, maybe you would lean towards Michigan, but I think 7's right. The total, yeah, I haven't bet a lot of totals in college football. I think I've only bet like 1 or 2 over/under in college football this year.
It jumped off the page at me. Like, I love the under.
I'm with you, man. You've been hot, dude. You've been reading the board really well. So
I know that key numbers in college don't matter as much, but a key number in totals in the NFL is 51. And the fact that this is over that, you got to get to like 31-27 or, I'm sorry, 27-24 gets me 51. Like, somebody's got to get to 30, and I just don't see it happening. All right, real quick.
These teams have been fantastic defensively. I mean, I think the identity of both teams is defense. So, yes, I would say that would be where I would lean the game script to trend.
100%. 2 other quick college games. Alabama, Tennessee at Rocky Top. Numbers, I guess, trending towards Tennessee now at 7, total at 65.5. Jared, I'll ask you one simple question. If Bryce Young plays and I'm getting Nick Saban under double digits against that pass defense, I'm hammering Alabama. If Bryce Young is playing,
it's all about Bryce Young's status. I think the number is telling you, and I took 7.5 with Tennessee like 2 days ago because I think it's going to get under 7. I don't think Bryce Young's. I think it's impossible to. It's very hard to get to my headspace of Bryce Young being 100%. I mean, it's like the sprained AC joint is usually 4 to 6 weeks. Every doctor I've read has said 4 to 6 weeks. So at 2 weeks, he might play, but is he going to be 100%? I think Tennessee to me is probably going to be I don't want to say sharper side because I think the public's going to hammer Tennessee too. But I think under 7, that's when the narrative will flip a little bit. If this gets to 6.5, that's where I think the Bama money steps in. But to be fair, if it gets to 6.5, I might come back on Alabama because I do have a 7.5 ticket in my back pocket right now.
But I just, with that pass defense for Tennessee, I can't. If this was double digits, I'm looking at a different. Nick Saban, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I tried to research a little bit. I couldn't get anything definitive. But Nick Saban in single digits as a favorite has got to be covering 60% of the time easily.
I can tell you very quickly. Hold on. I'll look it up right now on Bet Labs.
Look it up real quick. And now, while you're doing that, I'm going to go to USC and Utah, where Utah is a 3.5-point favorite, total 65. I still think people are undervaluing USC here. I think they're better than Tennessee just based off of their defense alone. I think they're as good as Michigan. I think they're probably a little bit better than Clemson, particularly offensively. I think this USC team is undervalued. Was mildly surprised to see them as a dog in this spot. I've backed USC right every time this year, and I knew the spots where they were going to not do well against Oregon State. I was really surprised to see them. I actually backed Wazoo last week, and I was surprised to see them cover that number. But it just sort of reaffirms what I thought, that USC is for real, and people don't want to believe it yet, Jared.
So you've been spot on about the Pac-12 this year. By the way, Saban as a favorite of 1 to 9.5 points, 17 and 18 against the spread.
Really, that low? Okay, well, thank you for that.
And he's 1-3 in his last 4. Georgia being the win last year in the Natty, but then lost to Auburn, 3.5-point favorites in 2019, won by 3. 6-point favorites against LSU in 2019. They lost that game outright. 26-14 lost to Auburn in 2017 as a 5-point favorite. So in the last 5 seasons, it's happened 4 times, and he's
Auburn and Georgia are basically the bugaboo, though. Auburn and Georgia,
LSU and Georgia. Those are the 3.
Okay. All right.
No, actually, Auburn and LSU, because they beat Georgia. Yeah, Auburn and LSU. Tennessee's never been on this list because, let's be honest, Tennessee's been so shit the last few years. Yeah. They haven't been a 1 to 10, 1 to 9. But you've been spot on with you really good look last week with UCLA. I've been very high on this Utah team, and it hasn't worked out. They have not proven to be a good bet so far this year.
Something wrong with that running game. It's not right. I know the numbers look like it is, but you watch
their defense is getting gashed too. The front 7 of their defense, I think, with Devin Lloyd and the other linebacker that they lost to the NFL, I just don't think the explosiveness and the push on the front 7 is there. And there were a few moments in that game against UCLA I thought that they maybe could get over the hump, but you have to give credit to the Bruins. They made all the plays in the big spots, and that was a game that I think was it was fair to say that the Bruins were the better team there. I'm curious because we haven't seen USC struggle really at all yet. They've had a couple of moments where maybe you thought that, maybe you thought that they weren't going to be the right side, but they've passed every test. Lauren asked me yesterday if the Pac-12, if USC is a playoff team. I mean, if they go undefeated, of course, absolutely, they're in the playoff.
Even with one loss, if they win the Pac-12,
done deal.
Even a one-loss Pac-12 champion USC gets in. The logo alone should put him in. But I would ask you this much.
Yeah.
Dorian Thompson-Robinson is an electric quarterback. He's a fantastic athlete. Caleb Williams is a superior quarterback to DTR. And
Utah's going to struggle defensively. We'll see how he handles. Is this a night game? Game?
Yeah.
That makes it a little different. Night games in Salt Lake can be tricky. So we'll see how he handles this environment.
It's an evening game, 8 p.m. Eastern. But,
All right, so it'll be like dusk. Yeah. The fascinating thing with this game is we've seen the push-pull from – so the way that the college football betting markets work, there's like 4 or 5 like offshore groups that are like the most respected groups that like pace the line. I think maybe one of them might be onshore, but for the most part, most of the quote-unquote syndicates these days are all offshore. And they really get involved with the market at a very early stage of the week, usually in college football. And we saw a fascinating push-pull. This got all the way up to like 4, and then it's drifted back to 3. I mean, and it was the same thing last week with the UCLA game. The sharp money is very polarized in the Pac-12 this year. It seems
Yeah.
like there's a lot of really respected groups that have very different opinions on Utah and USC. So we're kind of seeing this, tug of war with the line. It's fascinating to watch. I'm sitting out this one. I'm just going to let it play out. We have the future on Utah. I hope they win, but I'm not feeling confident after last week.
This may be my 3-star play of the week, by the way, which will go up on the website. I'm tossing between this and one other game, but I would tell you, if you were going to bet this game, just bet the money line, because I don't think the spread really comes into it. If Utah's going to win this thing, I have a hard time believing it's by a field goal. If Utah wins this, it's because they dominate for 4 quarters and they win by a touchdown. And USC, better off taking on the money line. Take the extra cash in your pocket. I don't think you're going to need the 3.5 points. This is a money line play on both sides for me.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right, let's shift gears now, get back to the Major League Baseball playoffs. Welcome in Paul Sporer, who writes for Fangraphs covering Major League Baseball as the division series are underway. And we get a small little pause in the ALDSs tonight as the NLDSs continue. Braves and Phillies at 4:35, and then the nightcap between the Padres and Dodgers. Paul, welcome in. I just wanted to get some reactions from you yesterday. Beyond the soul-crushing defeat that the Seattle Mariners took, what else stood out to you yesterday in the game ones?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. But 3 of the teams with the byes won. The 4th team, got down early and fought back and actually had a chance there with the Braves too. So, we were wondering how are these byes going to set up? And one game doesn't say anything definitive one way or the other, but they go 3-1 on the opener. I don't know that we're ever going to learn something like, oh, you don't want the bye. Because I was seeing some chatter about like, oh, you want to keep the momentum from the first series. I think we've seen the rest versus rust thing over the years. Obviously, we've never had a setup like this. But like when a team sweeps and the other team goes to 7, it's team dependent. There is not too much to take from it. So I didn't take a whole lot from necessarily that. But it was definitely something I noticed. I do think the teams that lost are still very live, though. All 3 of them, I think, played well, especially the Padres getting punched in the mouth by Big Bro, fighting back. They were in that game. I know pro teams don't take a ton of moral victories or anything, but when you assess the game there, I think Seattle, Cleveland, San Diego should at least feel like they're in these series.
What's the toughest part about betting the post? Like, to me, the baseball postseason, I think it's a really tough, like, little section to bet. Because unlike the NFL, one game matters a lot, just like the playoffs, one game matters a lot. In baseball, during the regular season, one game really doesn't have that same sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Now in the playoffs, it does. I think it changes the way we look at props, pitcher props, quick hooks. At bats, are longer. They don't give a lot of more strike. Hitters want to elongate at bats and they're battling more. It's really difficult, I think, to bet on from an odds perspective too, because I would say the underdogs have a little more value, but I don't have any data to back that up. From your perspective, what's the most difficult thing with going from regular season betting to now postseason for Major League Baseball?
Well, generally speaking, the ball is going to be in play even less, and especially with the 3 true outcomes game that we have today, it already is in play, not enough. And so you heighten that, you lower how often it's in play in the playoffs, and you just add a ton more randomness, right? Playoff heroes in baseball are often random dudes, way more than they are the studs, the way they are in other sports. Obviously, basketball is its own thing. The guy can take over. You can just force feed him the ball. Football, if it's the quarterback, he's going to touch the ball X number of times. I think like hockey and baseball playoffs create a lot more of those randos, some random third-line defenseman who scores 2 goals. Holy smokes, he's a household name now. Number 8 batter comes up in the biggest situation. You don't get to put Bryce Harper there. You got to go with Bryson Stott, and we got to see if Bryson Stott can make a name for himself. So the utter randomness of it, I think, makes it a bear to try to handicap. I do really think playoff baseball is a lot harder than regular season baseball, and probably the hardest single playoff game sport to bet.
I would agree.
Bet unders and starters, I guess, right? That's the
Nerfies. We can handicap the Nerfies. We know exactly who's batting in the top of the first and the bottom of the first.
Exactly. I think that's probably an angle that you could take on a bit more. And I know you and I, Jared, have talked about Nerfies and Nerfies before. But tons of Nerfies. Of course, There's going to be the occasional uprising in that first inning if a pitcher comes in looking like they got dead arm like Max Fried did yesterday. But yeah, scoring's lower, balls in play so much less. It is a super random game in the playoffs. And then, like you said, baseball as a one game is always just kind of a one-off random during the regular season. But when you're putting all your focus on it in the playoffs, it is still that random one game aspect. But now you've put,
urgency,
20, 30 units on it. Yeah, you got all this urgency because you put a bunch of units on it. Maybe we shouldn't be upping any sort of unit bets or anything like that.
No.
Kind of still keeping it like you would in the regular season. Don't up your bets just because it's the playoffs.
Agreed.
To that end, with the teams that lost yesterday, if you were going to place a money line wager on one of the teams that lost yesterday, who would you back today?
Great question.
Today,
or tomorrow, I guess, if you want to pick the Guardians or the Mariners.
The AL has that.
Of the
AL
four teams that lost
yesterday,
who has the best chance to even the series tomorrow?
Guardians, because I've already got the Guardians winning that series. So they took a game loss there.
That's it. We're done. You're out, Paul. You got two Yankees fans here on the show. That's it, bud.
It's really more pro. It's more pro Cleveland than it is anti-Yankee, and they got the first game there. That was a nice win for them. Garrett Cole goes deep into the game. They hit some homers. I thought that was a really, really nice game for the Yankees. I feel like with the Guardians going with Cal Quantrill, though not even their best, they were in it for most of the game. 4-1, pretty decent deficit there. But they got guys on. I think they did some things that again they should feel like, hey, we belong here. We actually out-hit them, but things didn't exactly break our way. So that is the one team that I've picked. I do think the three division ones, though, are live. Phillies, obviously, one, but then Mariners and Padres. I think these teams are absolutely live, but obviously I got to go Guardians because that was the team I picked before the series.
That's fair. Are you a prop better during the playoffs, or is that
more so than anything else?
Okay,
because of the randomness of everything.
What are the pitchers that maybe we should be keeping an eye on either today or tomorrow?
Tough part is, and you guys were getting into it a little bit, like with the playoff baseball, those quick hooks, they can be really tough for the strikeout props. And I've been noticing that a lot of avenues are going with really enticing numbers, but huge juice. So that's kind of put me off. Like I think at MGM, we got Cal Wright 3.5 strikeouts, but it's minus 160. So it's like, I do think he's going to get
3.5 for Kyle Wright.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that's thrown complete games this year.
That's what I'm saying.
What do you make of that, Zeno? That's your neck of the woods down there. That's a low number for Kyle Wright.
Is it a trap at minus 160, though?
Unless he gives up 4 runs within the first 3 innings,
he's going to go at least 5, right?
He won't have confidence in, especially because they don't have the off day and they pitched bullpen guys yesterday. They're going to be a little bit shorter on arms today for both of those NLDS series. So, you want to try to get a little bit more out of your starter before you get the off day on Thursday.
3.5 is a silly low number for a starter that has been one of the aces of the staff all year. And his home record is fantastic this year. Like Fangraphs, you guys have him projected today at 4.7, Paul. I mean, that's a pretty big gap.
He only fell under that number 3 times. So
the whole season?
He only had fewer than 4.
So that's like an 80-90% hit rate right there. That's pretty decent at minus 160.
I might pay the juice on
that. You think with
probably
the way
not worth
pitched,
it, but still a low number.
I mean, it might not be worth it, but again, I found it intriguing, but then I saw the big juice on it. I was like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
But with Fried going short yesterday, you got to figure, like you were just saying,
that's the part of the handicap
that they're not necessarily going to try to get him out early unless Philly forces it. If Philly beats him up, then you got to take him out. But if Kyle Wright's doing his Kyle Wright thing, the thing he did all year very well, how does he not get 4 within like 3 innings? I don't know. So I definitely like some of these strikeout props. I think they're going lower with the numbers, bigger with the juice because of the playoff tournament baseball. But again, I would even look at Zach Wheeler's at 4.5. I know Atlanta's tough, but Zach Wheeler's another guy who goes deep in the game.
So low for Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, it's also
they really are juicing these numbers. They are making you choose. They basically are begging you to bet the. I mean, they are begging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you just have to sit there and hope that they don't have a bad inning within their first 4 so they can get 5+ innings. That's exactly what you're going for. I tend to lean toward doing it, though. Even though those juices are high, I'm looking at those numbers. It's hard to get away from those numbers.
Well, here's the question. What are the outs props? Because that is a good way to correlate if the numbers are fair. I don't see outs props posted
I
right
don't
now
either.
for either of the two pitchers today. And Mark, you look at these numbers a lot more than me. That, to me, that's the correlating factor. If the outs are usually lower than what their average is, then it makes sense for the strikeouts. But if the outs are still the same as normal averages, and then the strikeouts are lower with juice to the over, that would give you a little bit of value to the under with outs props. So no, am I crazy? Am I crazy with that assessment?
No,
I think that makes sense. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah. No, I agree. The logic works out. It's all connected, right? So it's similar again to when you see team totals in the NFL and the over total for the game. Like all that stuff has to correlate in one way or another. And if it doesn't, there is something up. But to your point, Paul, I think all the books need to do is for one of these low numbers to go their way, and with all the extra juice that you pay, they end up breaking even or making money on it, right? Like they've done this. They know how this works.
Everyone likes to bet the over too. I mean, let's be honest.
True.
They're not getting as much under money, so they don't care. Like they're willing to take that liability of making the under a really juicy bet on the plus side because they know they're not going to get a lot of under money. Like they're just, it's not a bet that is made by the public very often. Under strikeouts, under out. Most of the betting in the playoffs tends to be the over.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it there. And so, the strikeouts is something I'm definitely going to be looking at. I'm going to keep an eye on and see if they bring up the outs props. It'd be interesting if they don't.
I'm fascinated by that. Yeah, like if they're not downgrading the outs props, then you're getting value on the outs props more than the K props.
Bingo.
Yeah. Makes sense to me, Paul. It makes so damn much sense. We'll see what happens when it actually plays out, right?
Of course.
It makes sense to us. We're talking about it until the game starts, and it's like a ridiculous result in the first inning.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden they string 3 hits together and
rights on the ropes. And what, 4 2-out hits in the Braves game yesterday in the first inning?
Oh, my gosh. That was crazy. And it was clear, like, Fried didn't have anything. But yet they were still in it till the end there. Obviously, with the home run, they end up making a 1-run deficit. So they're not going to go anywhere. But Philly, I think this team is live. If they can avoid having their defense hurt them, right? And so you got to keep the ball out of play as much as you can, which, again, we already talked about. It goes down in the playoffs. That could really benefit them if they can avoid making that defense a liability for them because it is very bad. But you can string together a few weeks of quality defense, even if you're a bad defending team, if the ball just kind of bounces your way. Not as many gaps hit, not as many 100-mile-an-hour grounders that they're flubbing type of deal. So this Philly team, they got 2 aces. They got a lot of power in the middle of the lineup. My boy Nick Castellanos, I kind of tabbed him as the X factor. Looked pretty smart after one game with 3 hits. But that's a guy that he can get going for them and play the way he should have this year. That gives them such an extra dynamic there because Schwarber and Harper are the two guys they worry about. I think that's why they went with the lefty to start yesterday. I don't know that, or that's why St. Louis went with the lefty with Quintana. I don't know that Philly can go that deep if they don't get some of that secondary lineup going, though. If it's just Harper and Schwarber, and I don't know if they're going to get going. If Real Muto, Castellanos start to deepen the lineup, Gene Segura, like I mentioned, Bryson Stott earlier, I think they could beat this Braves team, even though this Braves team is insane and somehow way better than the World Series team. That's the part that really messes with my head.
Yeah, to say the least. Make sure you guys give him a follow on Twitter at Sporer. That's Sporer. He is Paul Sporer of Fangraphs. Thanks for the time this morning. Appreciate it. Great stuff, man. And enjoy the rest of the MLB playoffs.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Again, Paul Sporer of Fangraphs. Wanted to remind you guys before we get to our plays of the day and what is on the Pickswise.com website that Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Go to Superbook.com or download the app today. And this season, we're all rooting for safeties. That's right, because Superbook will give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. Just place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or total. If there's a safety scored in the game, in any game on Sunday, you get $50. So last week when the Giants took that safety in London, everybody before the 1 o'clock kickoff, $50 in there. We'll visit Superbook.com.
I think we had 3 consecutive weeks, right, with a safety?
Yeah.
Am I wrong about that?
It sounds right. I know
we had one in the Jimmy G game.
Right, yep.
And then we had one in the Lions game too, I think. You
had one where what's-his-face ran out of the back of the end zone. Yeah, Jimmy G. That's what you're talking about, right? It was Jimmy G.
Yeah, that was the Broncos-Niners game. Yeah. I think we might have had one in the Lions game the following week too. I might be wrong.
Can't remember. Superbook.com for terms and conditions. All right, Jared, what is up on the Pickswise.com website as far as 3-star plays for today?
Well, we got baseball covered on our end. James Milton's got Champions League today, 3 o'clock Eastern. And then late night, if you are awake on the East Coast, I will certainly be awake here on the West Coast. Avs Blackhawks, Chadwick Wetzel, puck line. Hockey's back, folks. I'll be honest, I am very excited to tail some of Chadwick's and Lauren's hockey picks this year. Probably won't be making a ton of my own picks on the hockey world for at least a few months until we get out of this football madness. But hockey is now back in full swing on the site. So we got hockey and Champions League for you today over on Pickswise.com.
Very, very, very nice, as they say. All right, our plays of the day. It is that time where we try to help make you guys some money. So, Jared, I will tee it up to you, my friend.
Yeah, so yesterday, I've been theorizing about this, and we talked about it last week. The Yerfies more profitable so far during the postseason. If you want to go to my handy-dandy calculator here, I'm calculating a 6-7 record for the Yerfies through the first 13 postseason games, but up almost a full unit. What does that tell you about how these bets are priced? The Yerfies, for the most part, offer more value, at least on the early part. So what are we going to do today? We're going to bet a Nerfie. It is my first Nerfie it's actually my first postseason bet, period. And we're going to go Phillies, Braves, Nerfie. So this is the early game today. Game one was a Yerfie and over game. Stone cold over from the start. Yerfie 2 runs in the first inning, and then I think the over hit in the 4th or the 5th. The over was like 7, and the game ended 13. So it was a stone cold over, almost double what the expected output of the game would be. And I think it makes sense when you talk about the narratives of these two teams. Both teams were facing a lefty starter yesterday. Well, both teams are top 10 in production this year against lefties. Well, let's flash forward to today. Righties on the mound. Zach Wheeler, Kyle Wright combined 45 and 11 to the Nerfie this year. That's about 80%. Very solid, above average Nerfie rates. Wright has been exceptional at home. I know this will probably be part of your handicap on the Braves. 15-2 Nerfie record at home this year. His ERA overall at Truist Park is under 3. And you talk about Zach Wheeler, also fantastic. Zach's been one of the best Nerfie pitchers in baseball over the last 3 years. Since 2019, he has an 82-18 Nerfie record, which is 82%. Again, 75% is about the major league average. 80% is exceptional. Anything over 80%, cash me the Nerfie tickets. I did break down the numbers right against the top 4 of the Phillies lineup. 8 for 37. That's Schwarber, Hoskins, Realmuto, Harper. 4 homers. Realmuto's got 2 of them. Harper, Hoskins, 1 each. No homers for Schwarber, who's actually 0 for 8 against Kyle Wright in his career. Zach Wheeler against the top 4 of the Braves lineup. That's Acuna, Swanson, Riley, Olsen. 24 out of $110. That's only 218 with 5 homers. Acuna's got 3 of them. Olsen, Riley, 1 each. Swanson, who I know you probably saw this, really struggling offensively, has not taken Wheeler deep. So I like the home run numbers, the batting average numbers against the top of the respective lineups, and the Nerfie numbers for both of these pitchers are solid. I'm laying 35 cents over at the Westgate, our pals at Superbook, and I think that is a very fair price. I'd probably lay up to 140 on this. That's probably where I would draw the dividing line. But I think at 135, it's a very fair bet for the Nerfie this afternoon between the Braves and the Phillies.
I'm going to lay a bit more than that even today and back the Braves on the money line at home to get even in this series. Kyle Wright, the starter this year against Philadelphia, went 2-1, but just a 2.84 ERA, and opposing hitters hitting $123 against him. He struck out 15 Phillies in 19 innings this year. A little disconcerting about the walks. Did walk 7 guys, a little bit high, but the Braves don't want to get down. They've been in this spot before. And this is where this professional Braves team shows up. Plus, you have to look at how game one unfolded. The Phillies were fantastic with runners on and 2 out base hits. The Braves, not so much. That won't persist for 2 games in a row. You have to believe the Braves will get some more timely hits because that's such a pro lineup here. It's 146 on the juice, minus 146 on the juice, but Braves at home in game 2 in a must-win spot. They're not heading back to Philly. down 0-2. I'll back Atlanta to win here in Game 2 for my play of the day. So that'll do it for us here on this Wednesday edition of Let's Bet It. Again, subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Download the Pickswise app at the Apple Store and on Google Play as well. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at Mark Zeno. He's at Jared Lee Smith. Appreciate you guys joining us and all the love and support for Pickswise and Pickswise.com. Back tomorrow for a Thursday edition. You guys have a wonderful Wednesday. Best of luck. Cash your bets. Go get it. Go bet it. Have a great day.